This is Kevin for crackberry.com.
This is Phil from Android Central.
So lame. And I'm Daniel Rubino from Windows Phone Central.
And I'm Rene Ritchie from imore.com, and welcome to Mobile Nations, our cross-site, cross-platform podcast about everything mobile. We are back. Kevin, it's been a while.
It's been a while, and I can't stop laughing now. I think from now on, when we start, we have to say our names and do, a hang loose or who loves you?
Yeah. So we've been traveling. We all went to various parts of the world, and I think the sanest way to do it is
we all went to California.
That's true. We all went to Moscone Center. We actually left baggages for each other in the center and then just picked them up. I think there's like scattered remains of phones all over that place now.
Yeah. You guys your underwear is too big. I don't like it. Who brought the tidy whities?
That was all Nick and Cindy's from Florida.
So pink thongs only for me.
Let's go in reverse chronological order and work our way backwards. Phil, Google I/O. It was last week, and apparently it was run by Tony Stark, because all I did was turn on the TV and people were skydiving onto the stage.
Twice, actually, yeah. It was pretty awesome. First day keynote, they're like, hey, we're going to skydive now with Project Glass on. Second day, they're like, hey, we're going to show you how we did it. Actually, it was really cool. If you haven't seen it, they used... Project Glass is like the little goggles, right? And they got a little heads-up display, and they can shoot video at the same time. So they did a Google Hangout while these guys were skydiving. And to do it, you need Wi-Fi, right? So they had little satellite dishes, and you could see them aiming them up at the skydivers to shoot the RF signal up there and give them Wi-Fi as they're falling.
And maybe boil their blood.
Yeah, none of them are having kids now. But it was pretty damn cool.
Right, before we get to Android, let me just ask you about that. Is Google Glass the future? I mean, we've seen Apple have patents to broadcast images to your eyeballs. I'm sure Microsoft's got a Connect Mobile in the works. BlackBerry can embed QNX in everything, including our brain stems. Is that going to be the next thing after phones, Phil?
Man, I tell you, people just keep trying this augmented reality stuff, and it's like they're determined to make it work even if it just sucks. I don't know. I haven't used Project Glass. They didn't actually really let anybody try it, though they are going to send out developer versions like next year, and then you're not going to see it commercially for a couple of years now. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe not. I'd like to think at some point I don't need a computer screen 2 inches in front of my face, and I don't need to be able to take video with my eyeballs. But that's me. I've been wrong before. I'm the guy who thought the MP3 was never going to work.
Well, Dan, you think that they'll actually go for glasses, or they just start embedding stuff in our skulls? I mean, you could gesture UI your way through life.
No. I mean, well, Microsoft has this plan too. I think that's sort of the unreported story here. When the slide deck was leaked a couple of weeks ago it was actually about almost 2 years old, the slide deck. It's kind of old. It's called Fortaleza, I think it's called, for Microsoft. That's their project's name. And it's sort of the same theory where you're going to wear glasses, it'll have a camera on it. But it's actually coming out on the same time, because the Google Glass, it's going to be 2013 is a developer testing stage, but they're not actually planning like a public release like 2014. Well, this is back then. That's when Microsoft was planning on releasing theirs too, was 2014. Difference is this: Microsoft's version is for the Kinect, and it's going to basically make like a holodeck in your living room. So it's going to be sort of like a Kinect experience for gaming and interaction that way. But that's only in 2014. 2015, they had it with a 4G Wi-Fi radio built in so that you could go outside, basically. And the idea was, you stream down all your media content and access all your stuff in the cloud via glasses. Presumably your phone might have some interaction too, which is, I believe, how Project Glass is supposed to work. It builds off of Android, uses that as the radio. So even Microsoft has plans for this stuff. I'm kind of with Phil. I'm not really sure if this stuff will catch on.
Do you want it, Dan?
Kind of, but it has to be more Minority Report than, current versions. No one wants to walk around with a pair of nerdy glasses on with a giant visible camera. Everybody knows you're wearing it. They can make it small enough so the camera's hidden.
You look like a pervert, right?
Yeah. And more importantly, if you can get solid battery life, that's going to be the real issue, actually. Then I might be up for it. But I think we still have a lot of a ways to go. But no one has to do it first. So
I want to know
or
if Kevin's going to get Porsche designed BlackBerry sunglasses
Yeah,
in 2015.
Likely, or whatever the most expensive pair is, for sure. That'll be on the top of my wish list.
Is that the next thing after phones, Kevin? Wearable computing?
Yeah, I mean, wearable computing, or I think the embedded, not necessarily embedded in our brains, Rene, but just displays embedded everywhere. So I mean, you remember a couple of years ago, TAT did that 3-minute YouTube video, sort of the year 2015. And it was like you got out of bed and you had this phone that, you know, you pulled on the sides and it became wider, and then you walked to brush your teeth and your mirror in the bathroom became, you know, it was a fully functional display. So you had your sports scores and weather. And I mean, Ashley at CES this year did that Samsung window, which was very Minority Report. And I guess for me personally, I would rather have that world to live in than necessarily a geeky pair of glasses.
And Shadowrunner.
Yeah, I think that's, especially, you know, the first person who gets in a car accident wearing Google glasses. I mean, hey, I might be the guy who does it on purpose because Google's got deep pockets to sue, right?
No, the cars drive themselves, according to Phil.
They might.
So Phil, after Sergey's thing was absolutely fantastic, but I think the big story was Android, at least for us, was Android 4.1. Was it what you expected?
I didn't know what to expect. Actually, really had no idea. We were kind of right in that it's not a huge increase. It's really let's see if I've got a phone that's charged. It's really a refinement of Android. I mean, you get some new fonts, new notifications, which are really nice. I'm gonna totally forget all the features here. Android Beam, which other phones are using as well, has been improved. You know, more APIs, some really good APIs coming, especially in YouTube and Google Plus. So that's a big deal, and it's faster. So Project Butter is a big deal. Let me see if you can see the widget I've got on here, and just you can see the speed at which you.
That's what I was hoping for.
Move around the UI.
That was the best news from I/O for me, Phil. With Project Butter.
It is so much smoother now. It's really, really good. And that's always been one of our complaints when you talk about the difference between Android UI and iOS, is iOS is just a million times smoother. They've really, in their words, they declared war on lag. And they really have. It'll be interesting to see what the other manufacturers do with this, you know, in the next 6 to 8 months, and if they're able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, you raised that question yesterday on the Android Central podcast, because Google is increasingly doing things that used to be done as enhancements by manufacturers. And at some point, you think that might collide, like Google's new voice technology with Samsung's S Voice. How does that all play together?
You know, you like to think that Google's kind of taken its ecosystem back, and to some extent it is. But at the end of the day, you still have the carriers who are the ones buying the phones and selling the majority of the phones, and that's still a huge roadblock.
And that leads us quite neatly to the Nexus 7. There's no bigger sign of Google taking their ecosystem back than them making a $200, almost zero margin tablet, arguably the right way.
Yeah, so we've got the Nexus 7, and it's sitting way over there. I can't quite reach it. It's a really nice tablet. I like it a lot. So I've used the Kindle Fire a lot. I use an iPad a lot too. I really do enjoy the 7-inch form factor, especially when traveling. It's just so much easier to stash somewhere. This is certainly a Kindle Fire killer in specs, in hardware, and certainly in UI, I think, at least in speed and fluidity. But my big concern is that Google just doesn't have the retail that Amazon does, right? Millions of people go to Amazon each day to buy stuff, and hey, there's a Kindle Fire, you want one of these. Whereas Google Play, it's like, it's not a big destination still.
Well, Kevin, BlackBerry tried the $200 price point, right?
Well, they didn't intentionally try the $200 price point. There's still, you know what, I went into the BlackBerry store in the Minneapolis airport flying home from Google I/O, and they're still selling playbooks there, $4.99, $5.99, $6.99.
How's that going for them?
But I mean, they have moved playbooks at the $200 price point very effectively. And I think actually that discounting effort, you know, really works for selling these kinds of tablets, because, you know, as soon as like, you know, Best Buy or Future Shop or Staples or The Source or any of these places put the playbooks on sale, immediately I get flooded with phone calls or emails from people saying, $200, should I go buy one? That seems crazy not to, because of that, that perceived discount. If it would just hit the market at $200 from day one, I'm not sure if it would have been perceived the same way or done as well as when they blow them out.
So here's my question. There is no 7-inch tablet market. I mean, the Kindle Fire, for all the hoopla, it seems like the sales numbers really aren't there, and Amazon doesn't disclose them, so it's hard to tell, but there's no massive amount of Kindle Fire volume, Nook tablet volume, even the BlackBerry Playbook, it didn't hit huge volumes yet. There was no tablet PC market. There was just an iPad market. Do you think that stuff like the Nexus, and I'll get to Dan in a second because it's interesting that Microsoft Surface isn't going to the 7-inch discount bin market. There are rumors that an iPad mini is going to come out at $200, basically running the iPad software as is at a smaller form factor, because Apple believes there is no market here and they can make one. Is that a fair assessment, Phil, or is this just a hard category for everyone to fill out right now?
It's tough. I think the big difference here is $200 is an impulse purchase, right? You can buy one of those and not feel bad about yourself in the morning. Whereas an iPad is still a pretty big decision. Now, it's a big purchase, and for that matter, so is an Android tablet, right? When you're spending $400 and $500 and $600, that is a lot of money. $200 you can get away with, and even if it ends up not the greatest thing in the world, you give to your kids, they're plenty happy. So I get that, but I'd see where you're going, that there's no 7-inch market. I would disagree. I think there is. I think it's just been everyone's had a tough time breaking into it, especially on the Android side, because you started with some that really weren't that great. We're talking almost 2 years ago now. With the original HTC Flyer, and then
the Galaxy.
Samsung, and then the original Galaxy Tab, and just phone UIs on tablets that didn't really work. And we've come a long, long way since then.
It's interesting though, Dan. Like you're going to have Windows Phone 8 or Windows 8 Phone, as I like the way that you call it, is going to be up. It's going to be getting bigger screen sizes, but not too big. And you're going to have Surface at around 10 inches, but nothing in between. You think Microsoft is just staying away from that?
Well, it's definitely too early to say, I would say. I mean, just because the Surface hasn't even launched yet, the Surface we don't know much about. I mean, we know those two devices, but the way their wording is on it is that there will be multiple form factors, and this could turn to a series for them. So there was even talk of an Xbox, themed version that would be more gaming centric. So I don't really know what's up Microsoft's sleeve here. They're going to have a few iterations of this that they could do a 7-inch. Or if not, of course, they'll pass it on to their third-party partners if they still want to make tablets, which I'm sure they will.
But what would that keyboard cover look like at 7 inches, Dan?
Yeah, that's true. So stuff like that won't be able to probably come along because I think there are limits what you can do with something like that. So you can do the cover, but you can't do the keyboard cover. So obviously there are limits with the 7 inches. I haven't had much experience with 7-inch tablets, so I can't really say if I like them or not. I can certainly see the appeal, like Phil said with traveling, but I think that 10-inch area is still that perfect preferred experience, but 7 inches does a lot for lowering that price margin and getting people on board, which is all Google's doing with this, right? Just lower the price so low that
I ordered one.
That you're going to expose people to it, and that they're basically not going to have a choice. Doesn't mean it's a good experience. Doesn't mean it's going to be ideal. But I don't know. We'll have to see with the pricing with Microsoft what they're planning on doing. That's really the big question here.
And I'm curious to see what they do for ecosystem. The big thing for the Google tablets and for the iPad as well is that it can do everything, right? For a while now, I said, well, I don't need to get another Android tablet. And I'm saying this is the guy who covers the Android stuff, because the iPad will do Google Play Books. It'll do, Kindle stuff. It'll do Barnes & Noble, right? So it'll do all those three ecosystems on the iPad. So now the Nexus 7 does that as well. And Android tablets have done that as well. It's just I haven't had a tablet until now that's this good from Android, period. End of story. But, and those are two things that the Kindle Fire can't do, right? Kindle Fire is mainly locked into Amazon. So I'm curious to see if Microsoft does the same thing.
Well, they obviously have that deal with Barnes & Noble, so presumably something will be done with that.
That's interesting.
But I think long-term, no. I don't think Microsoft never locks themselves in with any service. That's always what's been nice about Microsoft. I can go on my Xbox 360. I can use Hulu. I can use Netflix. I can use Amazon Video. Mm-hmm. They're pretty much, or I could just use Zoom Video. I mean, they're pretty neutral on that stuff. So, I mean, the thing with the Surface, depending on which version, but it's going to run whatever developers make for it. That's the bottom line. If Amazon makes it an RT app for it, great. If it'll run on both. And that's the beauty of Windows. It's especially if you got the Pro version, you can run anything in the world on it. There's no limits, right?
Windows everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about basically an ultrabook. So now we're not even talking about the difference between a tablet and a PC. Whatever you can run on your desktop, you can run on a Surface. So
That's actually
we don't even have that problem.
That's actually an interesting question, and I'm going to ask you this, Kevin, because you've had the most experience long-term with a 7-inch tablet. The knock immediately, as soon as there were rumors that Apple would make an iPad mini, people said, oh, it'll be a content consumption device. There's no way you can create content on that. Look at the Kindle Fire. It's basically a front end for the Amazon store. But in my impression, the Playbook was a remarkably functional device.
Remarkably functional, but a lot of times using it, I wished for a bigger tablet. I think it comes down to, I mean, if you put it back to real life hardware comparisons, it's the difference between a paperback novel and a magazine. And that comes for consuming content and even creating content. I mean, are you writing on a small notepad or a big sheet of loose leaf? And there's clear advantages and disadvantages to both. I mean, I think the portability of the 7-inch is a lot more. And I think there's, like, I'll use an example of my mom even, right? She carries a purse. She takes her playbook with her everywhere. She's got lots of grandkids, She goes to watch these dance recitals and all this other stuff that kids do, and she records HD video on them at these places, at all these events. And then as soon as it's over, she plays it back for the kids, and they love it. It's absolutely, like, she would not, if I gave her an iPad right now, she would not use it the same way she's using her playbook, and she would want that 7-inch. But then there's other things, for reading and that, where she likes it. But then there's things where it's like, well, it'd be bigger if it was better. It would be better if it was bigger. Web browsing being one of those examples. So it's functional. I think creating content on the Playbook is a little tricky. I mean, if I like to use a stylus on my iPad, and I don't necessarily like to use it the same way on my Playbook. So I think the size does matter. But there's clear benefits depending on the activity you're doing.
So here's my last question about this, and I think this one has to go to Phil. Alex wrote a great editorial about the usefulness of the Nexus 7 outside the US, and that's always been my big complaint about the Kindle Fire. It's outside the US, it's more like a paperweight. Amazon just doesn't provide that many services. Apple does an okay job. They're still expanding. I mean, even recently they launched iTunes Music in a lot more countries. How bound are we to content deals, and how useful are these things internationally now?
Oh, absolutely, and that's still a big sticking point for all of Google, and not just outside the U.S. Here we still don't have Warner Music and Google Music, and that's a big hole. I mean, half the time I go to search for something, it's not there. I can't buy it, so I have to go to Amazon. So Google still has work to do there, and I appreciate that it's not easy. I really do. But if you want to play in the big leagues, you got to have that stuff, and you got to have that stuff outside the United States.
All right, so was there any other big takeaway from I/O for you, Phil? I mean, the Nexus Q is interesting to me because Apple tried a $200 plus TV dongle and it didn't really sell. When they put it down to $100, it sold better, but it's a hobby, quote unquote, for them. The Nexus Q is different.
The Nexus Q isn't a TV dongle. Yeah, it's different. And it's designed differently. I'm having a hard time explaining this to people because you really have to see it and touch it and experience it. It's this orb. It's about this big, and it glows at you. And they have put some real design flair into this. And that's something that you don't get with Apple TV and that you don't get with things like the HTC Media Link, which lets you stream content from your phone. And in fact, the Q doesn't stream content from your phone yet. I'm not sure if it will at some point. I bet it will. Right now, it says, all right, well, you've got Google Music, and you're going to use your phone to control it, but we're actually going to stream it directly from your account down to the Q, and then into your stereo or into standalone bookshelf speakers. I like it a lot. It's a lot of money. $300 is a lot of money. I don't, I appreciate that, but it looks good. It looks like it's worth $300. Apple TV is meant to be hidden. The Media Link HD from HTC is meant to be hidden away. And in fact, it's got a little clip with a sticker on it so you can hide it on the back of the TV. This is meant to be seen, and it was designed as such. And, you pay for that, and I get that. As I was saying on the podcast last night, it will do more at some point. It doesn't do as much, or it does different things right now, but they will expand this. I guarantee it.
I was surprised they didn't let Google Chrome browsers control it, because then you could basically not need an Android phone. I got to figure that's coming.
I bet that's coming at some point, because I would like that too already.
Yeah, see, you've got the Xbox. Do you know what the Xbox runs for now, Dan? I mean, there's rumors that it's going to go down incredibly.
Well, yeah, no, you can buy it at Best Buy for $99, and then there's a service plan you pay every month for it, but that also gives you the gold access. And so you pay cheaper up front for the actual hardware, and then you just pay every month. I think in the long term, you slightly pay more, just like everything would be. But, for a lot of people, you get rid of that initial barrier to entry. So, you go to Best Buy, $99, and you get it, and then you pay, I forgot what it is per month, $14.95 or something like that. And that gives you the gold access as well as paying off sort of
and that's like Netflix and all the other stuff, right?
Yeah, so it gives you the access to Netflix, Hulu, and all those other sort of advanced features. I don't know, the whole Google Nexus Orb thing is interesting, but yeah, 300 way too much. I'd rather have actually the Nokia Play 360. It's just it's a different function. I don't want to compare them to in that, but for $150, you get a really powerful speaker that's really nice looking. That's Bluetooth or NFC, so it works with any phone out there. It's not just a Nokia or Windows phone thing, and you can just use it to stream music, and anyone can do that. And it's much more traditional, but it's also completely wireless, and it's only $150. For 300, you get two of them in your room, and you can set them up speakers anywhere. And now you basically just created an amazing stereo. We're talking like Bose level quality audio. I heard it fills the room up. So I don't know. They definitely, that price point needs to come down.
Isn't it odd that they pushed the tablet down to $200, but took the audio box up to 300? I mean, that's different approach from Google, Phil. We're not used to seeing that.
The whole IO thing was strange for me, only because there didn't seem to be much there for actual developers. It seemed like just Google announcing new products basically, and so it's fine.
No. There was tons for developers and sessions. Again, these are two very different products, and it doesn't have the economy of scale that the Xbox does.
Yeah,
at all.
So, Phil, who's manufacturing the hardware for Google?
I don't know. I mean,
they're doing Orb.
Well, Asus is a tablet, right?
Yeah, Asus is doing the tablet, and they're obviously taking a hit on it still. But it is a low-cost tablet with actually some pretty decent specs. The Nexus Q, I don't know. It's a lot in-house, I think.
So can you tell me just so for me, like I have an Apple TV and all I do is use it as an AirPlay receptacle. All I do is beam stuff from Mountain Lion or I beam stuff from iOS and watch it on my TV. I'm not a big music guy, so I don't have a lot of other stuff. And what does the Q do? How do you use it?
All right, so the Q does 3 or 4 specific things right now. It streams music off Google Play. It does, I'm already forgetting them, and I forgot them last night as well. It does music, it does YouTube videos, and it does TV and movies.
So how does that compare to Google TV?
Which technically are part of YouTube. Google TV actually runs cable through it as well.
Okay.
So you go from HDMI out from your cable box into Google TV, and then theoretically that lets you control it. You can record. If you have Dish TV, it works differently there. Google TV also runs apps. Right now, the Nexus Q does not run apps, although they've already hacked it to do so. It runs traditional Android apps that just have to be tweaked a little bit for the layout and things like that and inputs. It has full Chrome on it. The difference is the hardware for Google TV has traditionally kind of sucked because it was all Atom-based. The Nexus Q is actually a Galaxy Nexus in hardware. So, same processor, same GPUs and stuff. So I think it's going to be designed to maybe do a little less. We'll see. I don't know. But I mean, it's very limited in what it does right now. I think they're going to open it up a little bit. But again, people are looking too much at the price and not remembering that this is not a scaled product, right? This is Gen 1. There aren't that many of them out there.
It's aspirational.
Yeah, exactly. You're paying more to have something that looks cool and does less, and
which is Apple. That's not Google.
Not a new phenomenon.
Yeah. No, but it's a new to Google phenomenon.
I think it's a sign of the times when you have things like Google or like Apple TV that have gone for that very cheap bottom line, but still have a lot of functionality, but don't have a lot of design to them.
See, it's like the iPod Hi-Fi for Google.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So the last question I have about I/O is, do you have any idea what the first 4.1 Hero device will be? Is there any indication of that yet? Is it the tablet or is there a phone coming?
I'm holding one right here.
But that's last gen, Phil. What's next?
No, this is current gen. Next gen will be the next Nexus, and by then we'll probably have a new version of Android. No, right now it's the Galaxy Nexus and the Nexus 7. That was a big point I tried to make in my column last week. Is it was all Nexus. So in previous years, they've had tables with, Samsung could show their stuff, Sony could show their stuff, HTC could show their stuff. There was nobody inside Moscone showing off hardware that wasn't Nexus.
Should the partners be paying particular attention to that?
I have a feeling they noticed.
Yeah. That's interesting, Dan, because Nokia is all buddy with Microsoft, and Google is now going hard on Nexus. Where do the HTCs and LGs, do they have to look to their own OS?
It's always it's a big source of debate for a lot of people in the Windows Phone community. You have the majority I think are hardcore for Nokia, and then you have the rest who I actually like Samsung's products. I think they make really good stuff, and they can still compete, but obviously they have divided attention when it comes to Windows Phone, right? A lot of it's going towards Android. A lot of our devices are basically just recycled Android designs, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But it just takes away from sort of the originality of it, where Nokia just purely creates, well, I don't say purely creates, because even the 800 is just the N9, so they take some designs and recycle a little bit too, but no one really noticed because no one bought those devices. But Nokia creates totally original stuff. I'm okay with this. I think Nokia is the only company doing anything interesting as far as creating hardware right now. Samsung would be a close second. I think Samsung is a serious contender. HTC is definitely doing some better stuff today than they were 2 years ago, and I like to see that. But when it comes, we did that story just the other day, for Google Analytics looking at searches, and Lumia phones trends higher than Windows Phone. So it goes to show you the branding that Nokia has is really resonating with people, such to the effect that it's actually overtaken Windows Phone as a brand name. So Nokia is clearly going to win this, and at least for the Windows Phone camp, is really the most interesting hardware. And everybody's waiting for them to do a tablet, which I'm pretty sure they'll reveal in September. So
the Nokia Surface.
Yeah, that's going to be real incredible, I think. Nokia's never done a tablet as far as I'm aware, and
they've done laptops though.
Yeah. If they can bring over that Lumia design though to tablets and a Surface combo, it could be really killer in terms of just looks and elegance, and so that'll be kind of curious.
Kevin, I want to get your take on this because BlackBerry was one of the first integrated manufacturers. Are we seeing a shift away from numerous companies all making the same OS to more tightly integrated models? Is that model winning?
I think yes. I think it might depend who you're talking about, but let's say Google, for example. I think there's an incredible challenge that a company like Google's facing right now, which is, Phil, Alex, and I, we walked through the Mountain View campus there on the Friday of I/O. And I kind of joked to Phil, and when we're looking around, right, it's awesome. There's big buildings everywhere and cool stuff. And we're like, yep, all bought and paid for with internet advertising and those little ugly AdSense ads that everybody clicks on. And it's true, right? All the money Google's still making to date really is coming from advertising on the web. Mm-hmm. And they know, and as everybody does, the world's going mobile. And so far, the money-making ability on the web has not transferred to mobile, right? So if people quit using computers and they start using phones, Google makes less ad revenue per money. And what this means is Google's smart. They're looking into the future and they're saying, holy smokes, if the web goes from the computer to mobile, we need to make more money and shift our models, right? Obviously, Android was one of those initiatives to get onto the handsets early at the lowest level possible, right? The OS powering the device. But I think now they're looking at something like this Nexus tablet's a good example, where they're looking at Amazon's revenue model here of content, and they're experimenting. They're going to try it out. And I think they're looking at something like the Orb, and they're almost saying, okay, maybe we can pull Apple-like abilities out of our butts right now and try building something that's cool looking and expensive and an object of desire. And
tasty hardware profits.
Tasty hardware profits. And they're literally experimenting like crazy. Google Glass also. They're saying, holy smokes, we need to get out of just making money off pimping clicks and do other things. And right now, Google is like just crazy experimentation everywhere. And I think you'll see some things where they see it working, you're going to see them crank it up big time. And where they fail, they will abandon and keep going. And survival of the fittest, right? So they care much more about Google being around in 10 years than HTC or Samsung or LG or anybody else. So yeah, you're going to see them take it back whatever they think is best for Google is what they're going to do. And I think right now they've seen that all the fragmentation is not helping. They've seen even their hardware partners Samsung's the only one making money right now. I mean, HT's making sales, but they're not making money. So Google's just going to start to take that slack back for themselves as much as they can. I'm just not sure that Nexus is like the consumer mainstream brand that's going to, take out iPad, but they're going to experiment. Google's smart, man. That's it. So that's my rant, and I think I'm right. Watch 3 years what happens, and you'll look back at this podcast and say, "Yep, called it."
Well, I think it's also interesting that there was rumors this week again about an Amazon phone. We've had rumors about a Facebook phone. Any big company that has a connection wants to own the platform now.
Yep. And mobile's the challenge. I mean, the world was simpler for these companies in the early 2000s. As soon as the internet went high-speed broadband internet and pretty decent web browsers, lots of companies became incredibly successful, right? And Google and Facebook rode that. And as it goes on to the handset, it becomes a different game altogether. It's not quite the old disruptive technology, innovator's dilemma, but it's a challenge for them, right? And there's room to get disrupted, and they're all being very smart over it.
That's the best segue ever into the Windows Phone preview event that Dan went to, because if you could, arguably Microsoft is the biggest, brightest, baddest company, and I mean baddest in the best sense of the word, from the last decade, and they've struggled to move into mobile. And if you haven't listened to this week's Windows Phone Central podcast, please do, because Dan takes you through Photon and Windows Phone 7 and everything they've been trying. But they are absolutely relentless, Dan, and they're almost doing an Apple-esque fearless thing here now too, because they're rebooting the platform with Windows Phone 8.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Obviously, Microsoft is, someone said years ago that Microsoft moves slow, but when they pivot, watch out. And I think that's what we're starting to see now, that they're finally pivoting. And so this fall, you're going to see Windows 8 desktop, Windows Phone 8 on the phone, and of course, they sell the Xbox, which is huge. It's the #1 console worldwide now. And so they have all of these things, and they're lining them up to be interact with each other. And this is only the first stage. You're not going to see really this go more advanced, I think, even till Windows Phone 9 and the next level, Xbox 720 or Xbox 8, whatever they want to call it, because the new generation of Xbox is going to be based on the same operating system as Windows 8 with the NT kernel. So that is the game plan. I think it's very ambitious. I think once people see it, it's got the same UI with the Metro interface. And once people see this, it's really going to click. I mean, let's talk about the upgrade, right? So they announced this week that Windows 8 upgrade is going to cost $39.99.
Crazy.
That includes, if you have Windows XP, you can pay $39. If you have Windows 7, you can pay $39. And what it's going to do is a little tool. You're just going to run it, install it. It's going to validate your operating system, and then it's just going to download it. And you can upgrade your operating system from XP to 8, and it'll even save some of your settings. Or you can even do clean install if you want to put it on outside media. For $40, that is an incredible deal. I mean, it's really just going to, gut piracy. It won't end it completely, but for $40, a lot of people are just going to be, yeah, sure, why not? Especially if you just do it with a software tool, no actual physical thing you have to buy, no CDs or anything. You just download, install it, and that's it. $40, you're done.
And Windows Phone 8, just to be clear, is a free upgrade, right? That's just for the Windows desktop. No, because people are gonna people send us email.
What, Windows Phone 8?
Yeah, that's just no, it's not a free up. All right, so we got into this a bit on Twitter, and Dan made a very good point. I come from an Apple background, and Apple has been upgrading. Apple is going to upgrade the iPhone 3GS to iOS 6. It's not going to get a lot of features, but it is going to be binary compatible, which means that when developers put out new apps that run on iOS 6, they'll run all the way down to the iPhone 3GS, the iPad 2, and the iPod Touch 4, which they haven't even updated in 2 years. And Windows Phone 8 is not going to run on existing hardware. Now, Dan has been saying that this is not a big deal for normal users. And to test this, I asked my niece, who she wears Windows glasses, Dan. She literally has sunglasses with Windows on the side. So it's a bit of it's a bit of a family shame, but I'm bearing with it. And she has a Windows phone. She could not care less about whether she gets Windows Phone 8 or not, because she figures that'll be on her next phone. I still think that updates are part of the feature set you should consider when you buy a phone, that if they're important to you, timely updates are something you should consider when you decide what to buy. Kevin, you're about to explode.
Yes, Apple updates destroy their hardware. They do it so you're forced to scream at your computer and say, this thing is now a piece of...
You can say it.
Go buy new. No, it's true, though. This goes back... I mean, I've spent... God, I probably have like 14 MacBooks and Apple product computers I bought. And they all, over time, become crap. I don't install any more programs on them or anything. But all those little software updates and security updates, I swear to God, it's Apple destroying the computer, so they forced me to buy something new.
But if they didn't update it, would you still use it, or would you go buy something new because you couldn't get an update?
It was fine. I don't care about the update. I bought it in the beginning because it was good enough. And then they ruin it all the time. And like this 3G, if you put iOS 6 on your 3GS device, which you should do for a...
We're going to absolutely do it.
Here, it's going to be a piece of crap. You're going to say, this thing's garbage. I can't even use it anymore. I wish they wouldn't have upgraded the one in the beginning.
I have a friend who has the Apple notebook or laptop, whatever you want to call them, and she has the same problem. I've never seen like OS 10 crash or behave poorly, but it's interesting. Like it runs slow. She just slow without programs, and I'm like, it's like yeah, and I'm just like, you should switch to Windows. Like, it seems like a lot better. And actually, that's an interesting thing about at least the desktop OS is it can run on a gigahertz system. So if you have a really old laptop, you can go install Windows 8 onto it, and it's going to run actually really well because it's meant to run on even an ARM processor. So it's going to run well on any sort of old, 1.2 gigahertz CPU. Now, getting back to Windows Phone 8, what you're saying is true. I agree with, but this is not a normal update. This is a paradigm shift for them, and it's going to happen once. It won't happen again for a really long time. They're changing the, what the OS is based on. It's the kernel change. This is really significant. It's huge.
It's the NT kernel now, right?
Right. So it's the NT kernel with WinPRT on top of it, which is similar to WinRT, which is what Windows 8 has. And so this is not just a version update. They said during the presentation, with going from Windows Phone 8 forward, you're going to get guaranteed 18-month support from them on that device specifically. And they're going to give methods by which users can upgrade their operating systems bypassing the carriers, which is a big thing that Apple's had. And we've already been doing this. Every time a new OS comes out, an update for Microsoft, we get the cab files. We just direct install it. And it's a lot easier than flashing Android, which I just did this week with Jelly Bean 4.1. It was actually kind of like, it was a bit of, but this you just go and install some cab files.
That wasn't a Jelly Bean update you did. Let's back up there a little bit. That was more hackery than updating.
Whoa, time out. I'm talking the same thing, though. I'm not talking about official updates. I'm talking about... Okay. I put Tango on my phones this week. That's not released, though, for my phone. I just installed the cab files. So I'm, it's one-to-one. But, so they're going to provide tools to do that now directly for end users. So it's just going to be, you can just manually install and update and patch your OS if you want to, bypassing carriers. So going forward, it's going to be really, really good. This is, it's a hump that they have to get by. It's unfortunate. I'm sure they're not excited about having to do this and having to deal with the media and the backlash, but it's a paradigm shift for them. They have to do this going forward to get their platforms all on the same page. It's unfortunate.
I watch Android Central, and the minute a new, not even 4.1, but the minute it was like 4.1.3, they are asking Phil when it's coming for their phone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I admit, 4.1, I'm using it right now, the Nexus Galaxy, and it actually is nice. They did a really nice update to it, so they're moving in the right direction. I think for Google and Android, it is getting significantly better. But Windows Phone 8 is going to be real impressive as far as what they can do, because now the phone can scale up and down. That's really the important thing here. You're basically putting a computer operating system on a phone, meaning that in theory, Windows Phone 8 can run 64 cores. That's actually what it can scale to. That's obviously not going to happen. But it goes to show you how expandable this really is. So 2-3 years from now, all of a sudden now, super HD displays are a big thing with some new other technology. They're not going to have a problem on the fly updating the operating system to take advantage of those technologies. Right now, Windows Phone 7 is a dead end. It's based on CE, which goes back to the 1990s, and it can't do dual core. I mean, that's the important thing here. So it was really a brick wall for them. They had to switch to something more advanced, which is what you're getting with this. So
and they couldn't have done Windows Phone 8 2 years ago or a year ago.
No, because ARM processors couldn't run the NT kernel and do the stuff it's doing now. So the actual chipsets weren't able to do it, and the whole getting Windows on ARM was a big breakthrough. They had to work with Qualcomm on that, so that wasn't something they could have done 2 years ago if they wanted to. So yeah.
So that's what interests me, Kevin, is there's been this meme going around that the problem with RIM is that they kept making phones in a portable computer world. And there was that famous quote from Ed Colligan at Palm saying the PC guys wouldn't just walk in and figure this out, where it turns out that that's exactly what they did, because they just stuck PCs on phones and made the phones an app that run on the device. And RIM is rebooting, I guess, into a computer world. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Absolutely. I mean, if you go back a few years, right, when you sent an email from your BlackBerry, the little default tagline said, "Sent from my BlackBerry handheld wireless device." Okay, that's what it was called. That's how RIM perceived it. They started as a pager. They put a keyboard on it, and it became a better pager, a pager on steroids. It became a handheld wireless device, a messaging device. And then a couple of years ago, they just kept adding more features to it as, the market forced them to almost. And then they tacked the line smartphone onto it. But that wasn't like, they didn't set out to build a smartphone. They kind of just eventually said, yeah, it's smart enough now. Now we'll call it a smartphone instead of a handheld wireless device. And now RIM has been very clear about, we are building a mobile computing platform. BlackBerry 10, buying QNX. This is to give us a back end and an infrastructure for mobile computing. And that's not what they're doing. So, we had some interesting news last week, obviously, with BlackBerry 10 being delays, being the first device won't ship until Q1 2013 now. And in those interviews, one of the things they talked about is that this is not just a phone operating system anymore. This is a mobile computing platform. There is a car component for automobiles. There is an embedded component for OEMs. So basically, they want to take all the places where QNX is currently used in industry and make sort of BlackBerry 10 applicable to those usage cases.
And QNX had no face, right? I mean, QNX was embedded. RIM has to build the entire front end for it.
Exactly, right. I think, this is the thing. I think all the work they're putting into their developer tools and everything else for, developers to build apps for the playbook and the new, BB10 phones, I think they actually want to make those tools equally as valuable to everybody who runs QNX today in the workplace, whether it's automotive or whether it's a nuclear power plant, or you go to the hospital and you look around at all the equipment around you that's running QNX, and they want to make BB10 apply to that. Not that everything's going to have BlackBerry logos on it, but literally the entire platform now becomes that, and this becomes a massive industry thing. And this comes back to RIM. When they talk about, on some of these investor calls, that things have been misconstrued. I've heard other tech bloggers and things just botch it so bad because everybody focuses on what they see, and we're all, gadget fans and that. So when RIM says things like, we're going to focus on who our core users were in that, people think they just mean phones in enterprise, right? But they're going back to more so, we want to solve and provide better solutions for some of these people in the world of business. And the phones in the BYOB model, yes, that's one of it. But RIM is really talking about industry, the things that power the world, not just the gadgets that us people use in that. And that's the platform they're trying to build out. And that's why I think they're really, people are saying, oh, RIM's worth more, yanking it apart. And all that might be true right now. But I really believe the management team and all RIM employees are working towards this kind of future where BlackBerry 10 becomes something that it's much more than phones and tablets.
So two immediate questions to that. Arguably they rushed the playbook to the market before it was ready, and they're not doing that with BB10. Yeah. They're taking their time, so they're going to get slaughtered no matter what decision they make. But is there a risk the longer you wait, other things could come up and make it even more complicated? Almost like the video game syndrome, where you try to get Duke Nukem 2 out and it just takes longer and longer.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think RIM, just because of the business situation they're in terms of, share value and, their earnings are now dipping negative and everything else, I think they really believe they have one shot at it. And if they just put a phone on the market sooner, which they could do. I mean, again, the playbook was a half-baked BB10 device. I mean, it's the same platform. That they put out a tablet on the QNX platform. BB10 is kind of a new skin on it in terms of what a consumer sees.
They could have released that dev phone.
They could have released that dev phone with a bit of a better skin, but it's all of the plumbing they're putting in the back end, all of the tools. And I think they have a lot of stuff on their infrastructure side they had to to build out to get work, or they had to rebuild it because frankly it was 10 or 15-year-old architecture. So it is like Dan's explanation of Windows 7 Microsoft had to upgrade to make the stuff work. RIM kind of had that too, even the way the knock and everything works, right? There's certain things they can change, certain things that are just they cannot fix.
There was an interesting, people kept talking about whether RIM should just become a services company and license out BBM and BBX and everything else. And one of the arguments was that Microsoft did that with ActiveSync. But I think, Microsoft had so many other additional revenue streams that they sacrificed ActiveX for those other streams. But RIM doesn't have anything else. If they give away everything that makes RIM, there doesn't seem to be any bonus there for them.
Yeah, it just depends on what type of company they want to be and who they want to pick their competitors to be. I mean, I think one of the situations that RIM got into was everybody started putting them in the same basket as Google and Apple and Microsoft and that, when in reality, I'm not sure RIM always saw themselves like that, especially when they were still catering more to enterprise phone sales. And then all of a sudden, Pearls and Curves got picked up in the consumer market by carriers. All of a sudden they got sucked into being compared to these other big players. And the DNA of the company wasn't that sort of mainstream consumer tech company. And I think they need to decide if that's who they need to compete with. Like when people mention those names, does BlackBerry really feel they need to be in the same sentence with them? Or is there something a little bit beside that? They're partially in that market and space, but then they're equally strong sort of outside of that. And think about other massive companies.
If you think about it, like Google, Microsoft, and Apple aren't really phone companies. RIM is. It's a very different business.
It is. But I mean, a lot of their infrastructure now, especially with QNX and all of that rollout and where it is in the world, it's more like, I don't know, it's a mix, right? Facebook kind of does one thing, does it well. Look at little apps. Instagram got bought for $1 billion because they took one little thing and scaled it up.
And scared the hell out of Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, and RIM did that with the phones. I mean, there's a great interview that Jim Balsillie did, probably about 4 years ago on Canadian national TV with that George Stroumboulopoulos. And he basically said, and this is RIM at the height of their success. And he said, we're just gonna keep shooting for the moon, doing what we're doing. We're just gonna ride this thing out. And it's like, well, what if things change? We're gonna crash and burn. This was Balsillie saying this on TV 4 years ago, but this was kind of before iPhone and Android came into the space. But he just saw it as like, there's no need to change. We're just gonna keep growing this. It's a land grab for device sales. And I think the mistake was they thought they had a product that people really, really, really loved. And I think the delusional part about that, which we weren't delusional to, was that BlackBerry for a lot of years was more so a product that people tolerated. There were things about it that they liked, BBM, the email, the battery life, etc. And there were capabilities on the phone, but the actual experience wasn't lovable. It wasn't a joy to use it in a lot of times because you had hourglassing and slow boot ups, and the internet browser sucked. And they never actually won over the consumer love.
That's interesting. I did an article last week on iMore about the dangers of mistaking your product for your business, and how Apple has mostly been a success because they never thought the Apple II was their business, or the Mac, or even the iPod, or the iPhone. They always knew that their business was mainstreaming computing appliances, and they just presented newly evolved versions of those every decade or every few years, and they're always getting the next one ready. If they were just an iPod business, they would be in a lot of trouble right now, or just a Mac business, they would probably have never survived. The interesting thing for me is that, and I'll pivot into WWDC a little bit, a lot of people watched the iOS 6 presentation and they said like, oh, Android 4.1 is a bigger point release than iOS 6, or Windows 8 has X many features compared to iOS 6. And I'm interested in your guys' take, because for some people, I think if they had their expectations set, they knew this was what was coming for Apple, but there was this sense of disappointment at the same time that Apple was no longer maybe pushing the industry the way they did with iOS 1 or iOS 2 in the App Store. And I did a second article about just reminding people that iOS isn't for us geeks. iOS is really for my sister and for my mom. And Apple goes to great pains when they do include geek-centric features like notifications or fast app switching to hide them so that you never ever have to see them if you just want to use a phone. So I'm going to go to Phil first. When you start putting things like where Android is going compared to where you see iOS going, is that a fair critique of Apple that they're not pushing it as fast anymore?
Well, I mean, I think Apple's pushing it exactly as fast as they want to, exactly as fast as they probably need to. iOS is a big ship now. And, I mean, not that Android's not, but Android's more of a speedboat that's going to go kind of crashing headfirst into things from now and then. iOS is more of a cruise ship that's just kind of making its way through things. It's stopping here and there. People are having a great time while they're on it. Android is certainly more yelling and topless chicks, I think.
What about you, Dan? You got to see iOS 6, you got to see Windows Phone 8. How did you like Microsoft's chances after both events?
Well, we have to be very clear. Windows Phone 8 hasn't really been revealed yet. What they showed were some of the platform changes that was coming. So that was for mostly IT, OEMs, for the press of it. But the actual consumer features were not revealed, and there is a lot to come. So that's going to be revealed over the next couple of months. And Microsoft's strategy on that was actually pretty reasonable. They basically said, we don't want to go out there and wave a flag with all the consumer features. And they're like, look at all this great stuff. By the way, you can't have it for a couple months. So unless you can be really close to buying it or co-announce with the hardware, they don't really want to get into the consumer features too much. So all we saw were some of the big platform changes. So you guys really haven't seen anything on what Windows Phone 8 is going to do yet as far as actual functionality. And I think this whole thing with the upgrade will kind of blow over a bit once people see the new hardware. Because now Windows Phone 8 supports 720 HD screens, supports multi-core, supports NFC, so it supports all this new technology. As soon as people see that new Nokia Lumia handset with a 720 screen and maybe even that their super high-end 40 megapixel camera, the Pure View, people are going to quickly realize their old Windows Phone 7 is not as interesting anymore.
Is iPhone and iOS as interesting anymore?
No, but I think what Phil was saying was correct. They basically own the market. They can kind of sit back, relax a little. So they're mostly fine tuning and refining the experience. But
they've become Microsoft.
I've been a little disappointed with iOS 6. I don't know. They always build up so much that they're always releasing new game changing technologies and concepts that you sort of expect that almost from every time from them. So when they don't deliver that and they're just like, well, here's some updates, and you're just like, okay, those are nice updates, but where's the wow moment? And they didn't have a wow moment this time, and that's a little disappointing.
We gave you 3D maps. You can now cruise through Manhattan like you're one of the blimps on the Thanksgiving Day parade.
But Android does that already. I mean, that's nothing new, right? Nokia has their maps, which is coming in Windows Phone, which also does 3D stuff. So none of that is actually like a new technology. It's nothing.
And Nokia's
unique.
had really good maps for a long time.
All right, but I would posit that Apple never ever really does new technology. Apple's claim to fame and the secret of their success has always been that they take existing technologies that haven't really become mainstream yet, and they sort of make them mainstream. Like people had video calling before FaceTime. Google certainly had voice control before Siri. There were all sorts of touch-based interfaces before the iPhone, but Apple has a real knack for... Pardon me?
We had Twitter before Ping.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. They don't always go as hoped for by, I don't know, Ping was probably invented by someone's nephew. I don't want to get too far into Ping. And I'll throw this to Kevin, but what was interesting to me is that, for example, one of the big things here is the new iOS maps. And it's not really, it's almost like Apple got distracted by removing Google from the iPhone. And that was not a good relationship. People wonder why Apple did it. And Apple and Google had a very contentious relationship over maps. Google at one point raised prices of map tiles for the web. They've gone back on that now. But apparently, for example, Apple wanted turn by turn. Google wanted latitude. Google wanted access to certain data. Apple didn't want to give it. It was never as good as Maps on Android. Maps on Android is so much better than Maps on iOS. It wasn't even funny, and Apple did not have control of that. And they thought that mapping is so important in mobile that they need to present a solution that they can control. So that was a tremendous amount of effort. And they also showed off Passbook. And Apple really does think differently. They don't say, oh, there's an NFC chip in the next iPhone. They'll say, oh, look, you can walk into Starbucks and pay with your phone. You can walk into Target and pay with your phone. You will not hear a lot about technology. You'll hear a lot about use cases. Is that a hit for them, Kevin, to have to go back and kind of refactor at this point, or are they enough ahead that they can coast for a little while?
They're enough ahead they can coast for a little while for sure. But I guess the question I have is, so I mean, on this podcast already, Dan and I both talked about, Microsoft hit a wall with this. They need to do a massive upgrade, so they're set for the next X number of years. That's exactly what RIM is doing, and we've seen Apple fill out iOS more and more around this sort of, it's all built around the original iOS operating system, which I guess is built upon Mac, whatever.
And FreeBSD going back how many decades?
Yeah, I guess my question is, are they hitting a wall in mobile where they're going to have to do a big revamp so they're set up for the next 5 or 10 years? Because I look at some of the things on iOS that still suck, like multitasking. And I can't believe people don't complain about it. And here's going to be my example. Case in point is Rene, we were talking about Qi running, right?
Yes.
So I want to run, but I'm trying to master my running pace. So I downloaded. I wear my iPhone, as on my arm for running. I download a metronome app, right? So tick 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 tick. That's all it's got to do. Can you think the thing would actually work? No. Simplest app in the world. I tried 3 different versions, and it tick tick ticks, and then it slows down and loses its pace, or it quits working. I can't listen to music and get the tick 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 at the same time. It's one or the other. I can't do both. I'm like, this thing's crap. It's absolute crap. And I'm like, why is this not fixed on the platform? And I guess the thing is, most mainstream users don't care because they don't even do that much with it, and they do things one at a time. But I'm like, if Apple truly wants to build the best product, how come that functionality is not there?
So,
and I think it's because it can't be.
Well, so there's 2 things. One is it's kind of crazy that iOS is going to be one of the oldest operating systems on the market soon. I mean, it was brand new in 2007, and now almost everyone will have rebooted ahead of them. But I think there's 2 things that we can't confuse here. One is what iOS can do, and one is what Apple will let iOS do. And iOS it's running the BSD kernel. I mean, it could theoretically do anything. Multitasking on the iPhone is fantastic. It's just only a couple Apple built-in apps are allowed to do it. Everyone else is working through abstracted APIs. And Apple was very clear. I think it was iOS 4 announcement, maybe even before that, when they explained push notifications, that they could just turn on full multitasking and it would work the same way a Mac works because it's built the same. But they decided that people don't want to multitask. They want great battery life, and they want fast foreground applications, and they want to listen to Pandora, make Skype calls, and run TomTom. So all they did was turn on APIs for those 3 activities, and that's all you get. You can't have persistent internet connections. Anything that, and that goes back to my article, that iOS is not for geeks. Anything that any niche user wants to do, they will hit a wall for. 80% of stuff will work fine.
That wasn't a geek application, though. That was just a complete...
Metronome Qi running is not a geek application.
No, but running with, listening to music and listening to something else. I don't know. It doesn't seem that geeky.
Yeah.
What the hell are you guys talking about?
Apple their poo does smell.
No, absolutely. But again, they make those choices. They could choose differently, and they could just, for example, in iOS 7, and also to Dan's point, we haven't seen all of iOS 6 yet either. Siri was announced at the phone event. FaceTime was announced at the phone event. Video features were announced at the iPhone 3GS event. So it's quite possible that whatever the next set of Santa Claus TV commercials we'll see from Apple will involve whatever is shown off at the October iPhone 5 event. But I think it's true. I think that they're going to have to come to terms with those choices, Kevin. And right now, the home screen hasn't been updated since 2007. Apple doesn't want you hanging out on the home screen the way you do on Android with widgets. They want you to hit the home screen and immediately have to choose an app and spend your time in apps. But unlike the new Android widgets, they don't give you actionable inter-app methods either, or like contracts in Windows Phone 8, they don't give ways for apps to talk to each other. So I think the wall they're going to hit is the choices they make. And the only good thing is they won't have to rebuild from scratch. They might have to change the interface, which will confuse my mom, but they won't have to rebuild a platform.
So it really is I'm trying to visualize it. It's kind of like you're on stage. The curtains are all the way drawn down. They've only lifted them up halfway, right? So if they want, they could still lift things further up if they want to. They don't need to rebuild a new Like you're confident the platform is good for.
It's as if you're cooking in Gordon Ramsay's kitchen. He is yelling at you and saying, "You can do this. You're stupid. You cow. Get back over." And you can only do what he tells you. It's a fully functional kitchen, but you are completely at the mercy of the diva chef. And you can change that diva chef if it starts to hurt your business.
Then I don't like Apple anymore because
You never liked Apple.
I own more Apple stuff than maybe than you, Rene. I have like.
So reinstall one of your laptops. It'll work great.
I don't know.
All right, so let's do our usual around the room closing take. Kevin, BlackBerry between now and the rest of the year, you're not getting your new OS. So what's the story going to be?
So the story is I'm flying to Waterloo, birthplace and hometown of BlackBerry, on Monday to go to their annual general meeting of shareholders, where I fully expect to see shareholders out with pitchforks and hopefully not guns. It's going to be an interesting day and a couple of days out there. Hopefully I'll get some answers to some of the questions that we don't have answers yet to. We're in a dry spell. Honestly, every day these new phones aren't on the market, it just gets harder and harder for RIM. I'm always an optimist and a believer, but I think that delay was maybe the first time where my confidence got really, really shaken that, if they can't get it to market soon, maybe it never comes to market, right? For me, October, looking at their balance sheet, the cash in the bank, the value left in their relationships with carriers around the world, not necessarily the US, I'm like, okay, there's still time. But, moving to 2013, it gets far away, and it gets a little more scary. So, I'm hoping for the best. You got to think about the worst because you'd be dumb if you didn't. But I really hope they pull it off because I think there are people who want BlackBerry 10 phones.
And in the meantime, World Tour?
World Tour continues. I was kind of going to do more of a 1 month hard stop on each platform, but I think I'm going to drag Android out another 2 weeks, and then Dan's actually coming to Winnipeg towards the end of July, as is Rene and Phil, and we're going to do a little editors retreat for a few days. So I think that'll be when we maybe do a World Tour little segue, and I move off Android, and maybe Dan, you can bring me out a Lumia to use or something, and then you can teach me all I need to know about Windows Phone in a weekend, and then I'll be such a pro.
Swipe! I said swipe, Kevin!
But you know what I will say, Rene, just because I was crapping on iOS already today?
Yeah.
After using this 1X with this beautiful big display and then going back and playing with this iPhone, I can't even hold the iPhone anymore. It's just so little. The display is so small. It's a toy. Typer.
You did CES with a purple flip phone.
No, but the thing is, no matter what, I've decided more than even being, let's say, the BlackBerry guy, my distinguishing characteristic is I'm a two-thumb typer. If I can't type with two thumbs, I want to take it and just toss it.
Turn it sideways.
On this 1X, no, then it's crap because then it's inefficient. It has to be the ideal distance you're.
So what's your ultimate size for a phone?
This 1X is the closest for a big touchscreen because I can fly this keyboard in good conditions. I can probably do 90 words per minute right now with Swift Key 3. You have to do some customizations. You have to their defaults aren't good. You have to really minimize the time for getting alternative characters, and but I'm quick on it. I think I could beat Phil on it. But the other issue.
Oh, we're so doing a video for Phil versus Kevin at the retreat.
But the issue is, as soon as you start walking and trying to type, or back of a bumpy car, or, I won't say while driving, it falls apart.
Yeah.
But honestly, iPhone two-thumb typing is treacherously tight and small.
Well, you'll be happy to know that if the iPhone goes to 4 inches in October, it will not get 1 millimeter wider.
That's true? You really believe that?
There's 3 prototypes right now. One is still 3.5. One is 4 inches at the same width but higher, and I don't know what the third one is, but it's not looking good for. There's not going to be an HTC One X sized iPhone.
Whoa! So you're telling me they're still deciding?
So the thing with Apple, and you know this, Kevin, Tim Cook brought this logistics engine where they are the fastest turnaround company in the world. They went from plastic to glass screen in 3 weeks. They can decide up until July what they're going to do, and they probably will decide in July what they're going to do.
But I just find it weird that Apple wouldn't be. I guess it's just-in-time engineering.
Absolutely.
Right? Interesting.
And maybe you can buy a 7-inch iPad and use that as your phone. Just carry it on your shoulder.
Maybe. I don't know.
Phil, Android, the next little while. What are you looking forward to? Like you said, no big Nexus phone on the horizon yet. What do I have to wait for?
I don't know what we're going to see with that later this year. I mean, traditionally you'd get one toward the end of the year, and maybe we will. But I mean, there's still a little bit of life left in the Galaxy Nexus. The problem is the camera still sucks.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I'm back on the Galaxy Nexus. It's been a while since I've used it, and I'm perfectly happy being back on it. Except the camera sucks. Please, Google, whatever you do next.
I didn't buy it just because of that. I mean, especially with the lower price, I was all over it, and I use my camera phone all the time.
I'm going to start carrying around a second phone again, just because of that, and I wish I didn't have to.
I think Jerry said he was going to duct tape one of those Ashton Kutcher cameras to the back of his phone.
You know, the tablet space is still going to be interesting. I think we're going to see another Galaxy Note this fall. Yay. We're probably going to see another version of the Kindle Fire, which will be interesting. I'm really looking forward to Google kind of congealing the ecosystem some more.
Is that it? Is it going to be a more googly Android going forward?
I think so, and it should be.
So I got it. We talked about this a little bit on the Android Central podcast yesterday, but I did this other article, and I got some praise for it, some heat for it. But it was my love letter to Android. I said I want Google to take responsibility for this phone. I want to be able to buy an Android device and not have carriers or manufacturers or retailers or users ever have to worry about large-scale patent problems, copyright problems, trademark, trade dress problems. I just wanted. I don't want to have to write about that stuff anymore. And because Google owns the platform, I kind of put the onus on them because they ultimately control the future of Android. And Jerry and you both had some awesome alternate points of view. But do you think that is what we're seeing now, Phil, with Nexus 7, with Nexus Q, with Jelly Bean? Is Google going to be that platform champion?
I think they're trying to. I really do. And I hope they do it, and I hope they do it well, and I hope everybody can do it without suing the hell out of each other, because it's tiring. I so did not get into this job to write about the legal process day in and day out, because it's slow and it's boring. It's not unimportant, but I want to talk about the tech. I want to talk about the phones.
It's and just to be clear, I mean, I think all these patents are ridiculously stupid, and it's the patent agencies that grant. I mean, recently someone granted a patent for displaying a URL in a bar next to a visual representation of the URL, which is a web browser, which I'm quite sure we've had for 15 years. So it's just mind-boggling to me what happens. And I really think that they are happier to have companies sue than them to actually go over these patents. And that's tragic for all of us.
Yep.
Phew. So any last words, Phil? IO forward?
Nope.
On to Dan. Windows Phone 8 and Surface. How does your glorious future look?
It's going to be a very exciting fall. Yeah, we got a new desktop operating system that's going to come out that's getting positive reviews. We have a new phone operating system coming out. It's going to be on some exciting new hardware. And the Xbox is still kicking butt. We have Surface tablets coming. So it's going to be a really, really good fall. Windows Phone still has a huge uphill battle. This is why I don't feel good about RIM, because Microsoft is struggling right now to get noticed. I think they got noticed with Nokia and the Lumia devices, but they still really need to get out there with Windows Phone 8, really push that hardware, get developers onto it. Luckily, Windows Phone 7 apps are all backwards compatible, so whatever is out there now will run on Windows Phone 8 with no problems. It'll scale accordingly, so that's nice. But we're really going to have to see if Windows Phone 8 is going to finally take off. But with the alignment between the desktop and the Surface tablets and more Microsoft stores opening, I feel everything coming together. It should hopefully do well. I mean, the operating systems are well received. No one criticizes it from, really negative. Basically everything that's been negative is going to be fixed with Windows Phone 8. So, fingers crossed that it'll finally catch on. But, Android and iOS have definitely been a tough to take on. So, but we're getting.
The question I had for you, and we've been getting this a lot, is a lot of people have blamed Microsoft's lack of agility on the internet and on mobile on Steve Ballmer and his running of Microsoft. And the Surface event seemed very quick. Like, it didn't seem like a typical well-planned Microsoft event. Do you think that Ballmer is hanging a lot of his future success on Surface and on Windows Phone 8/Windows 8? Is this like his last big chance to do it well?
There's been some really good Mary J. Foley over at CNET, ZDNet. I always confuse those two. But on her column, All Things Microsoft has written on this to talk about the different stages of Ballmer and Microsoft. What Ballmer's doing is actually really good. But yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But what's really changed at Microsoft is the fact that all these separate divisions used to operate on their own timetables, and they would put their own priorities ahead of any strategic vision for the company. That's changed, and I like to put that in Ballmer's hands as well as Steve Sinofsky. I think once they elevated Sinofsky up higher and he started reining in all those divisions to make a more unified strategic vision for the company, and that's what you're finally seeing now. Whereas before, services like Office and some of the live stuff were all operating independently, going their own directions, and it caused a lot of fragmentation, confusion out there for people. Now Microsoft's pulling that all back together. That's where you're seeing a lot of renaming, rebranding, and all this refocus on actual UI and user experience, which is the first time we've really seen Microsoft put user experience so far ahead as far as priorities, and it's paying off. I think a lot of people are looking at them with a new eye, and that's just a tech industry. Wait till the consumers actually get a hold of it, though. That's going to be the real test.
It's going to be awesome. I think Apple is very similar to what both you mentioned. We were all waiting for October for the iPhone 5. I mean, we don't know what Apple's going to call it yet. It might just be called the new iPhone, but the iPhone 5,1. It looks like it'll be a slightly bigger screen device, nowhere near as big as what Nokia did with the 900 or Android has been doing. Apple is prioritizing that one-hand ease of use, but they're not doing it the way BlackBerry is doing with a whole gesture-based interface. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And I think that if the iPad mini comes out, Apple does have a chance to really make a play for the small size tablet space. And I agree with Phil. We don't know if there's a market or not there. The same way we didn't really know that if there was a tablet market or not before the iPad. But I think at $200, an Apple tablet becomes incredibly interesting. We have Ashley Esqueda, our Mobile Nation's Monday Brief host, in the chat room, and she's been saying for a while she sees a huge education play for a 7-inch $200 iPad. And I would extend that to say that any large-scale deployment, if you're UPS or if you are a mainstream business or if you are the education system, at $200 with the kind of delivery system Apple's put in place, it's going to be really interesting. With all of that, Kevin, I think maybe we'll have a lot of fun with all the new phones come this fall.
It's going to be a busy fall. I wanted us to do our, whatever we're going to rebrand the old round robin to this fall, but I expected to have a BB10 phone then. But I think we should still do it this fall. I'll just take one for the team, as will Derek, and it might be an Android, Windows 8, iPhone 5
Do you think
shootout.
your world tour will come to a climactic conclusion this fall, coincidentally?
Yes. God, you're brilliant, Rene. That's what we'll do.
Awesome. All right. So, Kevin, where can we find out more about you?
Well, for now, crackberry.com. We're still kicking. We're still live and strong. The community is actually, it's funny. Bad news is apparently great for getting the community engaged every single day. So you will find me there and on the Twitter at crackberrykevin and Google Plus Kevin Mitchelluk.
Nice. Phil Nickinson. If we wanted to come to your house and stalk you, how could we do that?
All right, we take a left on Langley, and no, I'm not telling you where I live. Android Central, Twitter, I'm Phil Nickinson. Google Plus, I'm Phil Nickinson. I'm Phil Nickinson right here. Also,
Famous.
that's what my wife
Phil
calls me as well, among other
And
things.
your wife, famous columnist now too. There's a little rivalry going on, maybe.
She's kind of freaking out. She's like, "Why are these smartphone people following me?" I said, "Because I'm pimping you out, baby."
And because she says funny things about you.
Well, yeah.
My favorite was when she was at the airport with Phil and asked why there were no famous people near her.
Yes. I was like, hi.
Daniel, how about you?
Well, you can reach me at Windows Phone Central, of course, where I'll be there every day. And then, of course, you can follow me on Twitter. Oh, did we just lose someone?
We momentarily lost Phil.
Great way to ruin it, Phil. And so you can follow me on
Hey,
Twitter.
were you trying to say something?
Yeah.
Dan, where can we find you?
_Rubino.
Start over. Do over.
Oh, fine. Okay, so you can find me at Windows Phone Central, where I'll be there every day, writing, sometimes ranting. And you can follow me on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino. I don't do the Google Plus thing, although I have a Google Plus account.
You're full time now, Dan. You're going to be here all the time.
Start. It's part of the job description.
I hate you guys. Yes, I'm full time now. I'm no longer a sleep tech, so in theory, I'm getting more sleep now. Although it didn't happen last night. But yes, it's nice to actually not have to leave my apartment. I can be that shut-in I've always wanted to be.
Man cave.
Just me and my cats.
Nice. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find me at imore.com. You can find all of us at Mobile Nations or mobilenations.com/shows for every one of our podcasts. And if you like the stuff you listened to today, try out the other shows because we go into a lot more depth. If you want to contact us, you can email us at podcast@mobilenations.com or just leave a comment on the show when it goes live on all of our sites. Onwards and upwards, Kevin. 2 weeks from now, we catch up again?
I think that's a good plan. There's going to be lots to talk about.
Let's do it.
Kevin out.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.